Welcome back, football fans. Today we are going to be talking about the AFC wildcard matchup between the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. And this should be a great matchup. These two teams, of course, are division rivals. They split the season series this year, and both teams this year showed unbelievable, great resiliency. The Texans this year started 0-3. Since then, they've gone 11-2 in their last 13 games, including an 8-game winning streak. The Colts started 1-5. Since then, they've won 9 out of their last 10, and they're the hottest team in the sport. Not to mention, this team features two of the best quarterbacks in the league, Deshaun Watson and Andrew Luck. Deshaun Watson last year lit the league on fire in the 6 games that he played before he got hurt, and this year's been no different. He has 26 touchdowns, 9 picks, a 68% completion percentage, a 103 QB rating, and he had over 550 yards rushing. He lit this league on fire this year. And Andrew Luck has been no different. He has bounced back beautifully after that crippling injury. He is going to win Comeback Player of the Year this year, and he's one of the 3 or 4 frontrunners to win the MVP. This guy has been fantastic. He threw 39 touchdowns, which ranked 2nd in the league, 15 picks, threw for nearly 4,600 yards. He has been out of this world, and the Colts are coming into this game red hot, and Andrew Luck is no different. Over his last 10 games, he's only thrown 7 picks because of the established running game. We're going to get into that in a little bit. The Texans this year had 5 Pro Bowlers, 2 on offense, 3 on defense. Deshaun Watson, his favorite target, DeAndre Hopkins, who set this league on fire. This guy may be the best wide receiver in the sport. When you look at what he's been able to accomplish, even before Watson got here, this guy was having 15, 16, 1,700 yard seasons when he had Brian Hoyer as his quarterback, and this year was no different. He had nearly 1,600 yards receiving, 115 catches, and 11 scores. And on defense, they had 3 Pro Bowlers. Of course, both the defensive ends who are fantastic. J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, it may be the best duo in the sport. J.J. Watt, we said that Andrew Luck may be Comeback Player of the Year. J.J. Watt deserves serious consideration. This guy had 16 sacks coming off a major injury, 7 forced fumbles. That's ridiculous. McKinney, of course, is the 5th Pro Bowler, the middle linebacker, and he's very good as well. This team is great on both sides of the ball. And for the Colts, their Pro Bowl selections were an absolute disgrace. They only had 1 Pro Bowler. You can argue that the 3 biggest snubs to not make the Pro Bowl were from the Colts roster. Their lone Pro Bowler was Eric Ebron, who had a breakout campaign. The former first-round pick tight end had 13 scores through the air, 1 on the ground, and he really took off. But Andrew Luck, the man who threw him those touchdowns, it is inexcusable how this man did not make the Pro Bowl. He's 2nd in the league in touchdowns. He threw for nearly 4,600 yards. How does he not make the roster? And then the 2 rookies they drafted, how do they not make the roster? Quentin Nelson, the 6th overall pick this year. Last year, this Colts offensive line surrendered the most sacks in football. He comes over here. They've surrendered the least in the sport. You can't tell me he doesn't have a lot to do with that. Of course, I know that Frank Reich's system, the West Coast offense, a lot of quick throws, shotgun formation, I know that has a lot to do with it as well. But Quentin Nelson had a fantastic rookie campaign, and in my opinion, should be getting more consideration for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then Leonard, who I think is going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, led the league in tackles. He had 165 or so tackles, and he didn't make the Pro Bowl roster. That makes no sense to me. So it was a joke that those men are not on the Pro Bowl roster. Both of these teams are very talented. One of the biggest strengths of this Texans team is their turnover differential. They were plus 13. They committed the 3rd fewest turnovers and created the 4th most. This team is very opportunistic. Not to mention, they scored the 2nd most defensive touchdowns in the league this year. So this is a very opportunistic defense. Of course, when you think about this Texans defense, you think about the pass rushers. You think about Clowney, you think about Watt. But their biggest strength is actually their run defense. They were the 3rd-ranked run defense in the sport this year, and they only surrendered 3.4 yards a carry, which was the best number in the entire league. And when the Colts went up against them this year, it was no different. Marlon Mack and that Colts run offense, which has been vastly improved this year, couldn't get it going against the Texans. They only combined for 91 rushing yards in the 2 contests. That's like 45 rushing yards a contest. If the Texans are able to do that this week, they have a very good chance of winning this football game. Another thing that jumped off the page for me, if this game is close in the waning minutes, you better make sure the Texans don't have the football. This year, Deshaun Watson has been lights out in clutch situations. He has the 2nd most game-winning drives in the league at 5. He's had 5 game-winning drives this year. As far as the Colts go, when you think about the Colts, you think about Andrew Luck. And for good reason. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the sport since he's entered the league. Of course, he's had a couple of big injuries. And the reason for those injuries, or at least a large part, has been his horrible offensive line. over the course of his entire career, and lack of a running game, and his defense hasn't been much either throughout his career, and the Colts have addressed that this year, and that is why they have had such a successful season. The offensive line has been lights out, and the defense, especially over the last 10 games, has been vastly improved. Over their first 6 games, they surrendered 30 points or more in 4 of them. They were averaging 30 points a game given up. Over the last 10, they have not surrendered 30 points once. And they've only given up about 14.5 points a contest. This defense over the last 10 games has been a different animal, and it's been led by the rookie Leonard. And as far as the offense goes, the big difference that I've seen in the last 10 games as opposed to the first 6, in the first 6, they couldn't run the football. They were averaging about 82, 83 yards a contest on the ground. Over the last 10, they've averaged about $125, and that has led to much more efficient opportunities in the passing game. Now, some of that has to do with the improved offensive line play. Some of that has to do with the return of Mac. Mac missed a few games there in those first 6, and this running game has really gotten going. And when they can run the football, it helps Andrew Luck. In his first 6 games, he threw 8 interceptions. In his last 10, he's only thrown 7. Now, this is going to be a very close football team. These two teams know each other very well, and the last time these teams played was about 5 weeks ago. It was in Houston, the same place it's being played this Saturday, and the Colts won by 3, and I expect a similar outcome. I think it's going to be very close. It's going to be determined by 3, 4, 5 points. It's going to be a very close football game. But when I looked at the numbers, when I looked at the way that these two teams have been playing, I think the Colts hold a slight edge, and I'm going to tell you why. There are 2 determining factors. The first factor is the offensive line. The Colts have the best in the sport. The Texans have the worst, and that is a big key in this football game. The Colts have only surrendered 18 sacks. The Texans have surrendered 62. So if I'm the Colts, I'm sending the house. I think they're going to get pressure on Watson, and I think they'll create some turnovers. I think that is going to be a big factor in this football game. And the other factor, the other major weakness that I see from the Texans and strength for the Colts is the red zone efficiency. The Texans this year have the 29th ranked red zone offense. When they get into the red zone, they don't score as often as most teams in the sport, and they have the 27th worst red zone defense. They give up a touchdown 71% of the time a team enters the red zone. To the contrary, the Colts have the 5th ranked red zone offense and the 11th ranked red zone defense. So I think the Colts will more often than not put points on the board when they get into the red zone. So I think that will be the difference in this football game. So I'm taking it Colts 27, Texans 21. I, of course, will be streaming this game Saturday with Jet Central. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to be streaming all the wild card games, so please check that out. We are going to have that on one of our 2 channels. We'll be alternating. I cannot wait for playoff football. If you like what you watch, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Tell me who you think is going to win this game and why. As always, cheers.